Hi everyone, welcome back to another video of history. So this time, I'm not doing I think I did part 9 of or 8, I can't remember how many parts I've did so far on the 20 British monarchs. But for today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the history of the United Kingdom. So this video is going to be separated into 3 different parts because obviously if I do it all together, it's going to be way too long, okay? It's going to be too long for me to do. So in today's video, we're going to be doing the history of England. So this is part 1. So basically, we're going to be talking to you guys about the early Britain, which is known as let me have a look. So it's going to be Roman Britain, the Anglo-Saxon period, and then we're going to be doing the Norman kings. Then for part 2, we're going to be doing the England under the Plantagenets, Tudor England, and the 17th century. And then part 3 is the formation of Great Britain and the United Kingdom, modern England, which is the 18th and 19th centuries, and then the 20th and 21st centuries. So, yes, England has been around for more than 800, really a long time ago. So for part 1, we're going to be doing the history of England. So this is a history of the United Kingdom. Part 1, the history of England. Well, for part 1, we're going to be... Let me think. Part 1 is a history of England from 927 up until 1707. Yes, I'm only doing the dates up until 1707. But obviously, because I'm not including the 17th century, so we'll have to do it in a different way. So we're going to go from 43 AD to 2024, so up until the present day. So that's how it's going to work. A history of England. Part 1. Early Britain, the Anglo-Saxon period, and the Norman kings. That's how we're going to do it. So from 43 AD all the way up to 10... we'll do it up until 1135. So that's how we're going to do it. So that's part 1. Then part 2 is... We're still doing it, but this time part 2, we're going to go from 1154... all the way... No, wait, hold on. 1154, 1135, up until 1707. Yeah, I'm guessing. And then part 3, 1707 to 2024. I don't know because I'm so confused. So let's get started. History of England. England became inhabited more than 800,000 years ago, as the discovery of stone tools and footprints at Happisburgh in Norfolk had indicated. The earliest evidence of early modern humans in northwestern Europe, a jawbone discovered in Devon at Kent's Cavern in 1927, was redated in 2011 to between 41 and 44,000 years old. Wow, that's really old. Continuous human habitation in England dates to around 13,000 years ago. See Cres Wilhelm at the end of the last glacial period. The region has numerous remains of the Mesozoic, Neolithic, and Bronze Age, such as Stone Age and Avebury. In the Iron Age, all of Britain south of the Firth or Forth was inhabited by the cleric people known as the Britons, including some Gaelic tribes. Examples, for example, the Atrebates, the Calflunani, the Travnates, etc. In the southeast. In 43 AD, the Roman conquest of Britain began. The Romans maintained control of the province of Britannia until the early 5th century. So basically, so that's when London was first created in 43 AD. So all the way back in the 1st century AD. Literally in the 1st century. The end of the Roman rule in Britain fascinated the Anglo-Saxon settlement of Britain, which historians often regard as the origin of England and of the English people. The Anglo-Saxons are a collection of various Germanic people, established several kingdoms that became the primary powers in present-day England and parts of southern Scotland. They introduced the Old English language, which largely displaced the previous Brittonic language. The Anglo-Saxons warred with British successor states in Western Britain and the Hen Oghal, the Old North, the Brittonic-speaking parts of northern Britain, as well as with each other. Raids by Vikings became frequent after about 800 AD, and the Norsemen settled in large parts of what is now England. During this period, several rulers attempted to unite the various Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, an effort that led to the emergence of the Kingdom of England by the 10th century. In 1066, Norman expedition invaded and conquered England. The Norman dynasty, established by William the Conqueror, ruled England for over half a century before the period of succession crisis known as the Archie 1135 to 1154 for 19 years. Following the Anarchy, England came under the rule of the House of Plantagenet, a dynasty which later inherited claims to the Kingdom of France. During this period, Magna Carta was signed and Parliament became established. Anti-Semitism rose to great heights, and in 1290, England became the first country to permanently expel the Jews. A succession crisis in France led to the 100 Years' War. By the way, quick disclaimer, the 100 Years' War was started by Edward III in 1337 to 1453. 116 years! I know, it's crazy. A series of conflicts involving the peoples of both nations. Following the 100 Years' Wars, England became embroiled in its own succession wars. The Wars of the Roses pinned two branches of the House of Plantagenet against one another, the House of York and the House of Lancaster. The Lancastrians, Henry Tudor, ended the Wars of the Roses and established the Tudor dynasty in 1485. Under the Tudors and the later Stuart dynasty, England became a colonial power. During the rule of the Stuarts, the English Civil War took place between the parliamentarians and the royalists, which resumed in the execution of King Charles I in 1649, and the establishment of a series of republican governments. First, a parliamentary republic known as the Commonwealth of England from 1649 to 1653. Then a military dictatorship under Oliver Cromwell known as the Protectorate from 1659 to 1653 to 1659. Sorry. The Stuarts returned to the restored throne in 1660, though continued questions over religion and power was resumed in the deposition of another Stuart king, James II, in the Glorious Revolution in 1688. England, which had submitted Wales in the 16th century under Henry VIII, united with Scotland in 1707 to form a new sovereign state called Great Britain. Following the Industrial Revolution, which started in England, Great Britain ruled a colonial empire, the largest in recorded history. Following a progress of decolonization in the 20th century, mainly caused by the weakening of Great Britain's power in two world wars, almost all of the empire's overseas territories became independent countries. Wow, that's bad. So let's look at Roman Britain. So let's go from Roman Britain. So this is part 1. Roman Britain the Anglo-Saxon period and the Norman kings. Let's start with Roman Britain. So this is what Roman London. So this is called London in 120 AD. It remains of the Roman baths at Bath, England. What the hell? Remains of Hadrian's Wall. After Caesar's expectations, the Romans began a serious and cemented attempt to conquer Britain in 43 AD. At the behest of Emperor Claudius, they landed in Kent with 4 legionaries and defeated 2 armies led by the kings of Clavadaniel tribe, Claudius and Cartrius and Torquedamus, in battles at the Medway and the Thames. Torquedamus was killed and Claudius fled to Wales. The Roman force, led by Aulus Plautius, waited for Claudius to come and led the final march out on the Canviano capital of Clamdobonia, modern Colchester. Before he returned to Rome for his triumph, the Cantabria held sway over most of the southeastern corner of England. 11 local rulers surrendered, a number of Clarent kingdoms were established, and the rest became a Roman province with Clamdodonium as its capital. Over the next 4 years, the territory was consolidated, and the future emperor Vespasian led a campaign in the southwest, where he subjected 2 more tribes. By 54 AD, the border had been pushed back to the Severn and the Trent, and campaigns were underway to cement northern England and Wales. But in 60 AD, under the leadership of the royal queen Boudicca, the tribes rebelled against the Romans. At first, the rebels had great success. They burned Clamdobonia, London, and Veneman, modern-day Colchester, London, and St. Albans, respectively, to the ground. There is some archaeological evidence that the same happened at Winchester. The second Legion Augusta, stationed at Exeter, refused to move or fear to revolt among the locals. London governor Santimanius, how do you pronounce that? Santimanius. Some of these names, I'm really sorry, guys, because I'm trying my best to pronounce them, so please do not judge me how to pronounce these names. Santimanius Planinus evacuated the city before the rebels sacked and burned it. The fire was so hot that a 10-inch layer of melted red clay remains 15 feet below London streets. In the end, the rebels were said to have killed 70,000 Romans and Roman sympathizers. Planinus gathered what is left of the Roman army. In the defeated battle, 10,000 Romans faced nearly 100,000 warriors somewhere along the line of Watling Street, at the end of which Boudicca was utterly defeated. It was said that 80,000 rebels were killed, but only 400 Romans. Over the next 20 years, the borders expanded slightly, but the governor Ancloria incorporated into the province the last pockets of independence in Wales and northern England. He also led a campaign into Scotland, which was recalled by Emperor Domitian. The border gradually formed along the Staingate Road in northern England, so fated by Hadrian's Wall, built in 138 AD, despite territory forays into Scotland. The Romans and their culture stayed in charge for 350 years. Traces of their presence are uncobarrious throughout England. Wow, that's so much information. Now let's look at number 2, the Anglo-Saxon period. So now let's go through the Anglo-Saxon period. In the wake of the breakdown of the Roman rule in Britain from the middle of the 4th century, present-day England, was progressively settled by Germanic groups, collectively known as the Anglo-Saxons. These include Anglos, Saxons, Druids, and Franisans. The Battle of Durham was critical in establishing Anglo-Saxon rule in 577. Saxon monarchies extended in Britain since before the late Roman period, but the main influx of population probably happened after the 5th century. The precise nature of these invasions is not fully known, as there are doubts about the legitimacy of historical accounts due to a lack of archaeological finds. Gladius de Alexander et Commerce Britanniae, composed in the 6th century, states that when the Roman army departed the 6th century states that when the Roman army departed the Isles of Britannia in the 4th century AD, the indigenous Britons were invaded by Picts, their neighbours to the north, now Scotland, and the Scots, now Ireland. Britons invited the Saxons to the island to repel them, but after they vanquished the Scots and Picts, the Saxons turned against the Britons. 7 kingdoms are tragically identified as being established by these migrants. 3 were clustered in the southeast: Sussex, Kent, and Essex. The Midlands were dominated by the kingdoms of Mercia and East Anglia. To the north was Northumbria, which unified 2 earlier kingdoms, Bernicia and Denaria. Other smaller kingdoms seem to have existed as well, such as Lindsey in what is now Lincolnshire and Huys in the southeast. Eventually, the kingdoms were dominated by Northumbria and Mercia in the 7th century, Mercia in the 8th century, and then Wessex in the 9th century. Northumbria eventually extended its control north into Scotland and west into Wales. It also subjugated Mercia, whose first powerful king, Pendia, was killed by Oswy in 655. Northumbria's power began to wane after 685 with the defeat and the death of its king, Alquefif, at the hands of the Picts. Mercian power reached its peak under the rule of Offa, who from 785 had influence over most of the Anglo-Saxon England. Since Offa's death in 796, the Supreme of Wessex was established under Egbert, who extended control west into Cornwall before defeating the Mercians at the Battle of Elverdun in 825. 4 years later, he received submission and right from the Northumbrian king, Andward. Since so few contemporary sources extant, the events of the 5th and 6th centuries are difficult to ascertain. As such, the nature of the Anglo-Saxon settlements is debated by historians, archaeologists, and linguists. The traditional view that the Anglo-Saxons drove the Romano-British inhabitants out of what is now England was subjected to repulsion in the later 20th century. One suggested that the invaders were smaller in number, drawn from the Italian class of male warriors, then gradually accumulated the natives. An emerging view is that the scale of the Anglo-Saxon settlement varied across England, and that as such it cannot be described as by any one process in particular. Mass migration and population shift seem to be more capable in the core areas of settlement, such as East Anglia and Lincolnshire, while in more peripheral areas in the northwest, Much of the native population likely remained in place as the incomers took over as exiles. In a study of place names in northern England and southern Scotland, Bethany Fox concluded that Anglian migrants settled in large numbers in river valleys such as those of the Tyne and the Tweed, with the Britons in the less fertile hill country becoming acclimated over a longer period. Fox interprets the process by which English came to dominate this region as a synthesis of mass migration and late takeover models. Oh, wow. How much information do we... Oh, wow. Okay. So, this is a bit too long for me to read, so I just read up until the Anglo-Saxon period. Now, let's look at Northern England. The Norman conquest led to a profound change in the history of the English state. William ordered a completion of the Domesday Book, a survey of the entire population and their lands and property of tax purposes, which reveals that within 20 years of the conquest, the English ruling class had been almost entirely disposed and replaced by Norman landholders, who monopolized all senior positions in the government and the church. William and his nobles spoke and conducted court in Norman French. In both Normandy and England, the use of the Anglo-Norman language by astrology endured for centuries and left an indelible mark in the development of modern English. Upon being crowned on Christmas Day, 1066, William immediately began consolidating his power. By 1067, his face revolves on all sides and spent 4 years crushing them. He then imposed his superiority over Scotland and Wales, forcing them to recognize him as overlord. In common economic growth and state finances were allayed by the beginning of Jewish settlement in London. The English Middle Ages were characterized by civil war, international war, occasionally insurrection, and widespread political interaction among the anarchic and monarch alike. England was more than self-sustaining in cereals. What the hell? Dairy products, beef and mutton. Its international economy was based on wool trade, in which wool from the sheep walks of northern England were exported to the Saxon cities of Flanders, where it was working cloth. Medieval foreign policy were as much shaped by relations with the Flemish textile industry as well as by domestic adventures in western France. An English textile industry was established in the 15th century, providing the basis of rapid England capital accumulation. Wow, this is pretty cool. I'm not being funny, but because this video actually is kind of long because I had to read all that information about England. I know England is very long. Yeah. But, yeah, it's really, really long. So, for part 2, I'll be doing England under the Plantagenets, Tudor England, and the 17th century. So, please like and subscribe, guys, because I really need to get 200. I'm actually stuck on 187 again, so please like and subscribe.